For another episode of the Loquacious Thinkers. Welcome. I got a dope episode ready, for you guys tonight. With a powerful guest, Dr. O'Barry Cartman. Blessed us, decided to accept the invite and bless us with his presence tonight and some of his insight. Tonight's episode is going to be interesting. It's a different spin on the conversation of mental health and mental illness. We're diving a little bit deep into, the things that are going on. Let me turn this music off real quick. 1 second, folks. There we go. So, hopping on now to bring you guys a different perspective of mental health. Like I said, this platform is a challenge and to bring light to every perspective of mental health, mental illness, psychology that crossed my path. So I'm excited to bring you guys this one. I'm gonna start the show off tonight with we're coming from the perspective of African psychology. And I'm gonna come in here, man, and drop this video for you guys, about 5 minutes and a few seconds long. It's interesting. After the video, we'll go ahead and dive into our conversation tonight. Here we go.
African psychology for me would be psychology for Africa.
African psychology. It is the psychology that is contextualized around what Africans do. There are a lot of issues and there are a lot of dynamics that are happening. And in essence, everything that we do, our cultures, our mixing with other races and so on, has got everything to do with African psychology.
I think African psychology is developing very much topics and is working hard. And I am sure that in the next years, African psychology is going to make a very big development.
One second.
And that everybody will be wishing to come here with you, making this wonderful conference.
Basically understanding where we come from, the mindset that we have and the understanding of our history as Africans.
1 second, folks. Let me pause this for a second and figure out what happened with my sharing. Get it back to you guys.
And not denying that, so we can broaden our perspective and work as a team within our context as well.
So yeah, African psychology is the science of the behavior of Africans on the African continent.
My understanding is it really focuses on the basics of whatever culture in Africa as Blacks. What we are doing, our norms, our values, our differences with the white minority. So African psychology takes us back to our great grand, parents.
Decolonizing the Western traditions of psychology and trying to bring it and Africanize it. That's what I understand by African psychology. So bring it back to Africa and an understanding of how we see psychology in the continent, in our countries.
My view is that African psychology is a multi-system study of the African people in terms of behavior, thought processes, and other aspects of our life. African psychology should be very critical for us to understand the way we live, the way we organize, our living experiences or our lived experiences. We cannot incorporate psychology in totality when we don't include African psychology. We have to learn on our behavior, our people. We have to try to understand the mentality. Without understanding the concept of our lived experiences, we cannot do much understanding it.
African psychology, you must begin with some of the assumptions that is of Africa about what psychology is and who human beings are. So, for instance, one of the things I had interpreted and then constructed my practice around that is what the self is. And for me, in an African context, um, the self is relational, the self is connected, the self is continuous with everything around it, nature, other people, etc. So I then started to practice a psychology that is consistent with that notion of the self.
Understanding of African psychology would be a psychology that responds to the real needs of the of African people, a psychology that is based on African philosophies, but also a psychology that does not discard the Western understanding or the Western or Eurocentric kind of psychology, because there needs to be a combination of the two, because we can't discard the knowledge that we already have because we are identifying ourselves or we are taking our space. So I would say there's a need therefore to come up with an understanding that is combining both what we have and what we have but have not been recognizing, which is the African way of doing things. And yes, of course, we have to respond to the needs of our community. Our trainings need to speak to the needs of the community. And that means we need to relook the curriculum and we need to relook the training strategies, the selection of training, so that we produce African-centered psychologists.
All right, fam, we back. I thought that was a very interesting video, man. I chose that video because I was telling Dr. O'Barry earlier that I tried to when I was first diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I went through a few years, man, of trying to embrace what we've been taught through Western psychology on how to cope. And I wasn't getting any real relief from that. And within that space, I've always had a passion for psychology, man, that I didn't understand when I was a kid. And the things that I've learned in my psychology courses that, I wasn't taught these things. I thought that it stopped at Pavlov's law and things like that, and Pavlov's theory. So, although psychology was my passion back then, the funny thing about that was I knew nothing about, I was aware of these mental illnesses that we face as far as bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and things like that, but I didn't know the in-depth detail about some of these things, right? And it was cool, man. It was weird because once I started digging into different ways of coping and figuring out some of the causes of what may have triggered my mental break back then. I started finding information about different ancient civilizations, and I stumbled upon I stumbled upon the ancient Kemet civilization, from the oldest ancient civilization, and I found out that a lot of their perspective on psychology was mainly taught to the Greeks and the Roman Empire back then, right? And they kind of grew it on to other phases of psychology that made it now we know as the Western psychology. And it was funny because I sat back, man, and I was thinking, like, I would love to think that what we see today in Western and our Western civilization, that mental health came from a good place. And people wanting to help. But when you go back and you look through the history of psychology, I started to question it, right? Because, some of the things that I found out throughout that space, man, especially with the medication that I was prescribed, with the background in pharmacy, I've learned that a lot of those medications had they had starts somewhere else. They had meaning for they were given for different therapies, different ailments, and things that had nothing to do with mental health, right? Mental illnesses, and they made it fit. So you start thinking, like, what's the benefit of that? Big pharma once again comes in and stamps his foot into our culture, and tries to capitalize off of it. The one thing that I found, though, when I was taking that medication, it made my symptoms way worse. My suicidal ideations were worse. My depression were worse. And it just put me in a space where I was a shell. And I didn't like that. This happened years ago. I was on 6 different medications. I felt like a zombie. Even to this day, I can barely remember some of the things that happened throughout that space. And it put me to a place where I was thinking that it got to be deeper than this. And this psychology thing goes way further than Pavlov theories. It goes deeper than Aristotle. It goes deeper than the Roman empires. It goes deep, man. And when I found out, when I started learning about the chemists, I found out it was so much, man, that we didn't know, and we're not taught in history and things of that nature, where it kind of minimizes who we are, and not just us, but some of our other indigenous, indigenous cultures out here, man. So when I found out that the chemists taught the ancient societies, and I found out what happened to the chemists and how Kemet was it was originally Africa, but it was renamed Egypt after from the Greeks, and that just blew my mind, man. And I had to get Dr. Obari on here, man, because his perspective and the things that with his feet on the ground in Chicago, the things that he's doing in Chicago as far as when it comes to the mental health, especially in the community, is dope, man. And I think it needs to be brought more attention. And I say that because I didn't start getting better until I started to go and dig into some of the chemic philosophies on psychology. And a lot of that was going into spirituality. A lot of it was going into pretty much know who you are and things like that. And when you put it into a space of today, and you look at our culture today, even if the hip hop culture, let's minimize it, right? A lot of us don't know who we are, where we came from, man. And we don't really get a chance to think about that kind of stuff because we're so busy trying to survive, right? Through our traumas, whatever. And I thought it was interesting because it's in a space where, for me, it's in a space where the I don't know. I don't really have words around it, but I'm gonna see if I can get my man or Dr. Obari, see if this conversation that he and I have can kind of get to a space of not only helping you guys see, but also helping me. I'm gonna get ready. Dr. Obari, you ready? Come on in a second. All right, so I'm gonna bring him on in a second, man. I'm gonna get my nerves straight. Y'all know how I get. I'm a little nervous with this thing. Still adjusting to being on camera and talking to people out here, especially about this thing and being as transparent as I am with my mental health, right? Tonight's episode is purposely meant to challenge our current Western perspectives that we've been taught. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's in a space where, like, is there other ways to manage our mental health that gives more beneficial, outputs or results? So, Dr. Bari, I'm gonna go ahead and bring you on. Dr. Bari is, let me tell you guys who my man is. He's an author of Ladies Man, The Conversations for Young. He's an activist. He holds a PhD in clinical community psychology and the president of Chicago Black Psychologists Association, or just a psychologist? Okay. So with all that said, man, I'm going to go ahead and bring my man, Dr. Obari, on. 1 second. Dr. Obari.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What's going on, brother, man?
Not too much, man. How you feeling?
All's good. Life is good.
No good, man. Good, man. Hey, again, man, thank you. This is the second time coming on here for me. The first time was literally like my first time going live, on this platform, trying to get this thing together.
No, I appreciate what you're doing, for real. Like, I'm always going to support. I think we need more and more of this. Even the questions you asking, like, I appreciate you creating a space to ask questions in real time. That discovery process is healing in and of itself. So I support it. I'm for the movement. So
I appreciate you, bro. I definitely appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. I guess tell the folks a little bit about yourself, man. What do you do?
So my training, I mean, I love this question. It's at the root of the philosophy and the culture, the frameworks through which we do psychology has been at the center of my work. So I mean, before I even said what my training was, like I had to pause for a moment because like I wouldn't even really claim it. I got a PhD in clinical psychology, but it was really a PhD in white psychology, right? I got a PhD in European philosophical thought. And so I had to do a lot of work to undo some of the things I learned in school in order to be able to do the kind of work that is effective in our communities. So that, I mean, my background is psychology, but that ain't my mission, right?
I got you. Right,
that's a job title, but like the work is much bigger, much broader, much deeper than psychology could ever even conceive of.
Facts. Hey, man, how old are you, Doc?
43.
43?
Yeah.
Jeez, man, you're young, bro. Young as I don't know what, 3 years older than me. What I get my question, man, is like, what led you into that space? First of all, let me ask you this, right? I never really got your opinion on it. I always like gave my rant on it or touched on it a little bit, man. What is your what's your perspective of African psychology?
So that video you started was actually complicates. That's a layer above where we should even start at.
Right.
We're trying to do an understanding of our mental wellness as descendants of Africans in the diaspora, right? As Black people living in the United States, like we in a belly of a different kind of beast than those Africans in that video. Right. So they had a different obstacle to get through to get to that place where they could speak so clearly about African psychology after being colonized, right? They all speak in English over there, right? Which is dope because we get to understand and we get to connect, but you know what I mean, that ain't their language. And so to have them be on that continent and have had an outsider come in, rewire their brain. Everybody was wearing sort of European dress. They had European hair, right? They had, the aesthetic.
You're right. Yeah, video,
right. So it's a different kind of mindset for that type of tragedy to occur on the continent, like literally where the motherland is. And so it's not, better or worse. It's not. I don't like to compare struggles. It's just a different pathway than what happened to us, where we trying to reconnect to our heritage and our culture. And two things are happening. One, we've been so disconnected from what happened and how we lived back when we was living on the continent because of the traumas of enslavement and Jim Crow and hundreds of years we've been disconnected, that a lot of us can't even pinpoint a place that we can go back to.
Right.
We've just been so disoriented.
Right.
And on top of that, because of the traumas, the mixing of us, like, I did my DNA. I encourage people to do that. But like once you do it, it ain't no one clean. It ain't we all just, from Benin. We ain't from Ghana. We ain't from South. Yeah. We from all of it.
Yeah.
Right. So I got percentages of all of those different ethnic groups inside of my bloodline, which gives me a sort of a birthright, a connection, a bloodline connection to a diaspora of a continent that is a different experience than whoever. I mean, it sounded like they was from South Africa, maybe, right?
Yeah, South Africa.
First lady was a white lady, right? You know what I mean? So like, you get, it's a bizarre. You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? So like, they got their own things to wrestle with.
Yeah.
And there's some connections between the things, and we got to cross connect. We got to do more international. We got to understand the way in which the European has traveled the globe and caused havoc. We got to figure out how to redeem and restore some of those things. So there is something about the interconnectedness of the diaspora struggle, and there's a specific pathway that happened right to the Black American. So we got to. I want to tease those things apart.
That's perfect. Right. That was perfect. That's what I wanted. I wanted to bring attention to that portion of it, right? Because in that space, man, like what you mentioned, like touching back and tap back into our our foundations. We don't. Before we even get to that point, there's a lot of us out here don't know who our grandfathers and great grandfathers were.
That's right. That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So like, I think you're right and you're spot on with that, man. It's what made you so. Did you craft this concept, man, before you went into learning Western psychology?
I mean, it was interesting. I had an interesting path. I to the grace of God and my parents, I grew up in a house where we had conversations about culture in the house. My name was Obari. I didn't change my name to Obari. My parents named me Obari. They went through and found a book of African names. My father was a part of that movement, like in the 60s and the 70s, where it was like whatever they, what I'm saying, this the white devil. I mean, it was on that. Like my father changed his name from Anthony to Tabiti. Wow. And then he, married my mother, and they started, together going on this journey to recover who we were at our core. And so we grew up in a house where we celebrate Kwanzaa, which ain't an African holiday, so the African centered, sort of, we was playing African drums. Like I went to a school, it's a private school where we had like a uniform, we had an African pledge, we were singing. Like so I was socialized in a way that I understood sort of the pride, the rooted. I mean, so how deep our well is. And at the same time, as a kid, I still struggled with having cousins and having peers that weren't raised in my house. Yeah, was calling me weird. They couldn't pronounce my name right. They was making fun of me. Right? I had to deal with the African booty scratchers. I had to deal with the booga the booga. I had to wrestle for myself and my own internal identity. Like, how do I be in this American culture, the Black American culture? When my parents are telling me something, we got a sort of community of people that are doing this thing, but we kind of like off to the side. Yeah. Then when I go back to the crib, I mean, when I go outside playing basketball, I still got to wrestle with this. Yeah. So all that was happening growing up. And that was my foundation. Like I ain't never had no question about where we come from and who we were. My name, my father, the traditions in my house were a constant reminder of us being connected to something bigger and older in America. Wow. And when you go to school, you still got to play a different kind of game. So it took me a long time to come back around in my practice of psychology to reintegrate those things that I had in my house with those things that I was learning in school. So for a long time, I was feeling like I got to do this Western European psychology thing. I remember I was a professor in Atlanta at Georgia State, and I would like have to look like what I thought a professor looked like. So I had, I had shirt tie, I had glasses, and what I'm saying, I'm talking these big, loquacious words. I've been using to impress people with my intellect. But all of that was a game I was playing to fit into this thing that I thought was expertise, right? So I had my own brainwashing to undo while I'm playing the school game, because especially graduate school, they try to beat. It's like a hazing process. They try to just dig up your roots and turn you into a different kind of machine, so that they really make you ineffective. I had to fight with that. Like, I had to struggle with that, and so it took me a while in my career to come back to making the drum a part of my therapy. Okay, right. It took me a while to come back to making holistic health and wellness and comedic yoga and chant and spirituality and rituals a part of the healing process, right? And then prioritizing that for us, and not thinking that I gotta, in this capitalistic game, if I'm gonna make some money, I gotta get a license. I gotta have a state tell me that I'm a healer. I gotta keep going playing their games and evidence-based practices based on their theories. So I've gradually disconnected from all of that. Like, I don't do none of that no more. Hey, I don't even claim like the DSM. You keep talking about your bipolar diagnosis. I don't even acknowledge that.
I'm trying to get there, bro. I'm trying to get there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm getting there. Yeah. What was your F this moment where you was like, you know what, man, the hell with that, I'm doing this. Like, what
got the moment? That's what I'm saying. Like, it really be a journey, right? It really be a gradual process, like bit by bit. You read a thing, I'm saying, you bump into somebody else that put something on you, and you gotta stay open to it. Yeah. It ain't magic. It ain't no big, it's just like, okay, this is, something might trigger something that somebody else had planted a seed in. And I wasn't ready for it then, but now I am. You just gotta keep, gotta keep moving forward, keep studying. Yeah. Keep, being like that discovery process. That's what I'm saying. I love it. What you're doing is because you just opening the discovery process. You just asking these questions. You just like the curiosity of what it means to be alive drives us to be better every day.
But it's scary too, bro, because you know how this is a part of Big Pharma got his hands all into this. You know how Big Pharma do when it comes to people, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, in the space, because not only Big Pharma, bro, but just the one of the things that I battled with was the just the not having the confidence to come out here and talk about some things, because when you talk about stuff like this in this way, people automatically assume you are crazy. And I was guilty of that back in the day. My uncle, my grandfather was a psychiatrist, man. And you know, from what I hear from, I think it was back in the 60s, and 70s, he was ahead of his time as far as his practices. And you know, I've heard from quite a few people that said that he had a huge impact on a lot of people's lives, right? At the University of Maryland Medical School, he was like in that program there. And what happened there, man, that he was talking about some of the things that I found out, that he was pushing yoga. He was pushing things like the holistic side of it, which was way ahead of time back then, right? So, and then my uncle, he's in South Africa now. You know, he's I call him a career student, man. You know, with all over the place, all kinds of degrees and things like that. And he's been trying, you know, when I got diagnosed, he was trying to enlighten me on some of the things that I was dealing with. But even when he was doing it, it sounded crazy. That was me fighting my Western side of, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was so much behind that, man, because even as a kid, I was always growing up where I grew up at and being surrounded by the people I was surrounded with. I was always ashamed of my love for science. I was always ashamed of my love for animals, psychology, and things like that. So I kind of bottled up inside, man. It was been eating at me for years. When I got to college, I noticed that I've always struggled with math. I've always had a little bit of struggle with science, but my love for it kind of pushed me over the edge, right? Bro, psychology, dog. Like I was in that joint, like, hey, involved all over the place, man. And getting to this place now, it was kind of like, man, like, whoa. Not only am I finding out there are different ways to kind of cope for me that works for me, but also, whoa, what the hell is the chemist? What the hell is the chemist about? You know what I'm saying? And why did I hear about that amongst the Roman Empire and the Greeks and things like that I've learned all my life in school, not just in college, right? So it got me to that place, man, where now, like me actually going through the process of getting there, man, trying it, that, and I can tell people, man, like, you know, my struggle sometimes now. Every few months, I get into a space where it's just, I'm trying to fight through those old traumas and get to that new space, man. But as I get through that, I'm starting to learn that I can only get myself out of this stuff. There's nothing a doctor can get me out of. There's nothing medication can get me out of. Medication from the Western society has been taught in every aspect to treat, never to heal, right? So when you think about it from that perspective of taking that medication, man, and you see people on this medication for 15, 20, 30 years, bro, and they constantly digressing and going back into us and get back to the space that they were. I don't think it's a coincidence, man. You know what I'm saying? Now you start, so I'm careful how I push this thing now, right? Because my views, I don't push on other people, realizing that they got to get through their process too, right? This show, this podcast, this live stream is just meant for somebody to come in and say, oh, that was interesting, and go do the research yourself, right? So, man, like, did you have, like, other than, I guess, the typical insecurity that you had growing up, where you from, Chicago or?
Yeah, I'm Chicago, yeah.
You from South? Okay. Like dealing with the pressure from that society, bro, like did you personally have any battles with mental health that kind of got you into the space of psychology, or you knew that's something you always wanted to do?
I always wanted to do it. I always was into helping people. I mean, everybody go through that shit. Like I've had, you know, bouts of depression and anxiety I struggle with, and my own insecurities. So, I mean, I think that's a human thing. Everybody's, you live in life, you know what I'm saying, you're trying to sort shit out. To the point in where it unravels to the point when it's interrupting your functioning. Right? When somebody give you a diagnosis, you know what I'm saying? I think that, you know, that's because we don't have the supports. Not, even when you kept saying medicine, I cringe on the inside, because they have programmed this so much that when you say medicine, everybody hears a pill.
Exactly.
Right? But what we trying to do in the field of African psychology is expand what the medicine even look like, right? So to make it, when you say I'm breathing and doing the yoga and having herbs, having movement, that the rituals, the songs, and that those are also medicinal. That is the medicine.
Facts.
Right. So we got to have competing, right? Use the language to our favor. Even when you said your grandfather was ahead of his time, right? We talk about traditional therapy. I say traditional therapy. I think Western, right? But the truth is, like, whose traditions are we talking about?
Facts.
All right. Your grandfather was ahead of his time because he tapped back into before time. Like he was going back and back, right? He wasn't going thinking about what the new American thing was, because America's new. America's a baby, right? We the parents of the planet. And so, of course, we got answers to all these questions. Of course, we figured out how to get people back to their balance. How do you find somebody that is a divergent thinking, right? There might be a teetering between these two so-called poles, and not it be a disorder, but it might be a spiritual, you know what I'm saying, awakening that somebody tapped into that don't have the means to control and manage it, right? So I call it a disorder because it's disrupting.
Right.
I call it a disorder because my DSM told me that it's keeping you from going back to work, and now you're an interruption, right? But from a different perspective.
Hey, Doc, what's DSM?
I'm sorry, the statistic manual.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. No, you're right. We got a audience. So I mean, I reject it all. I reject the whole thing. So on my path, like I went to a black school, still learning about white people. I went to Hampton. They're still learning about Fred's. And
I graduated from Hampton. That's dope.
Right, but I just had to bump into a professor there named Reginald Jones, who, you know, he was ahead of his time too in the field. He had published these volumes of journals about Black psychology, and in it there were articles about African-centered theory. So as a student, because I was working with him, I got to read some of those folks: Cheryl Grills, Wade Nobles, Azebo, Francis Cress Wilson, Naeem Akbar. Like there was a bunch of people.
You got Naeem? Really? Wow.
Right. So these people still alive.
Yeah.
And these are the people that founded the organization that I became a part of. That I'm the president of the Chicago chapter, but there's a national chapter, 50 plus years of Black psychologists who have been asking this question you're asking right now for decades.
Wow.
And coming up with answers to it. Like not just, you know what I'm saying, think about what that interview you had, people were asking what their opinion is. We got people who have been studying this for decades, connecting to the historical ancestor knowledge we've had for centuries, and putting that together in the name of the sort of modern psychology that we understand. And not even always call it psychology. Wade Nobles, one of my favorite theorists, he's challenging us to not even use the word psychology because that word limits what we even dealing with.
Yep, there you go.
It's got roots in something else. And every time you speak that, you know what I'm saying, you affirming, right, you invoking something that's not even good for us. He has a word, I think it's out of Kemetic language, called Saku Shetis, that he wants us to call illuminators of light. Right? So he said we don't even want to call ourselves the thing that those people taught us to America heal that thing that it caused the trauma in. So we can't keep going back to them, asking them to fix this thing. They broke it, right?
Yeah.
And they ain't got the expertise to do what we know needs to happen. This intergenerational, you know what I'm saying, healing. They don't have the tools to do it. Right? I'm in Chicago right now. We got big problems. If I went to the top Western psychologists, I went to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and went to their department, gathered the best, the brightest, right? And had them come to a committee and say, hey, can y'all come to the city, South Side, West Side, come up with a program that's going to help stop the violence here? They could not do it.
Couldn't do it. You're right. They would right now. You're right.
They would cause more harm.
Yeah, facts.
Using their theory. We can't rely on them because they just don't know. They don't even know. I ain't even mad at them for that. Right. But they have created an infrastructure where we rely on them for accreditation, for licenses, for internships, for insurance. Right. They have created a monopoly while acknowledging that they have contributed to decades of harm. Right. They got apologies now. The American Psychological Association apologized.
I came across that.
American Psychiatric Association apologized. They acknowledge. You can go to their website right now and see a timeline of the different ways that they have contributed to racism, violence against Black, brown, indigenous people. Facts. And we still go to them.
Facts.
Right? That's us. We have to distance ourselves. We got to find our own theories. We got to use our own methods. My organization has a certification. We got to use our own certifications and stand on them. We say we got our own expertise to be the authority of healing in our communities. If we don't do it, I'm saying they can take advantage. They're going to
right. With the capitalistic mindset that we all go off, it would be smart too.
Yeah. That's right.
So, like my thing is like I've always kind of looked at things a little deeper. Sometimes it gets you it gets you in trouble, right? And it side eyes, man. But I was talking to a friend of mine earlier. Well, one of my perspectives on mental health, on mental illness, bro, is that when you label something mental illness and you diagnose it with a name, you're minimizing the impact of what caused that, right?
Absolutely.
And it doesn't allow you to get to a space of kind of understanding where, things went wrong for you mentally, right? But when you think about one of the things I was talking about a friend of mine earlier about was that when you look at, Chase, turn it up. All right, when you look at, sorry about that. When you look at, let's just take African Americans, right? You take the hood, and you're put into a space where you're your face. Sorry about that. Hold
You
Yeah, you got to fan that, bro. You got to fan it. You got to fan it. The when you're put into a space of when you're. Can you hear me? Okay.
No, you good. Keep going. Don't worry
When
about
you
that.
when you're put into a space of trauma and those type of environments, right? And it gets to a space of it gets to that space where oh my lord, it gets to a space, man, where I say that you minimize it, number one, by blaming the mental illness and mental health, because you don't really give you an opportunity to address the cause and the start of your where things deteriorate for you. And when you got the start of it, Chase, I need you to fan, brother. Here, I need you to fan. Just fan it with that. There we go. Thank you. It gets to a space where it takes away from the ability to kind of figure things out, right? And it got to that space where it's driving me crazy. It got to a space. It got to a space.
Breathe through it. Ignore it. Just focus. You're good.
So when you get to a space, right, man, like ultimately, trauma impacts everybody the same, right? But I believe when you get back to that space of what we were created for and how we were created to live, some of the things that we're faced that we face daily within this capitalistic society, we weren't built to handle stuff like that. Our fear was we out hunting, then, you know what I'm saying? Hey, it's a bear behind you. You know what I'm saying? Like, get out of there, something like that, or get into higher ground because floods and things like that. But I don't think we were meant to, deal with things of this nature. So my thing is in a space where can we really call mental illness an illness? Like when you look at things, man, you talk about what they consider a mental illness and mental challenges, right? Like I say ADHD for kids. Is not a child not being able to sit because he's not able to sit still for hours because he not interested in something and he's not. Is that really an illness, or is that him not being put into a space where he's learning where he needs to learn for him? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? So
absolutely.
So like my thing, man, like when you label something as an illness and you look back on the history of mental illness and you look at how they treated people that were mentally ill, bro, like it was nothing about that said anything that you were human. It was more, you were more of an experiment. So now how do we get to this space today that now, let's create a mental health system where we now provide medication and now we treat and then make it seem like it's, it's from a compassionate side, but realistically, man, it's not, you know what I'm saying? When you pull things back. And I think that when you look at what happens as far as trauma and things like that in the hood, as far as like me getting molested and things like that, bro, like those things mess me up. You know what I'm saying? But it wasn't, and it wasn't anything that they tell you can get over. That you can learn to live with something like that. But Western society teaches that you can heal from this stuff. Bro, you can't heal. You can learn to live with this stuff. So what I'm saying, man, is like in today's society, bro, like I think we mentioned in the last episode, like how the hell are you not mentally ill? You know what I'm saying? Like push into a space where me personally, bro, when they say all you gotta do is put your head down and grind and everything's gonna be okay, right? I'm one of the ones that put my head down and grinded for years. And then fell on my face. I heard Kendrick say it, and then one of his sons, man, Kendrick Lamar said, man, his son, I grinded for years, man, and fell flat on my face. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you like? What's the solution? Like, what is that? So my thing is this: with your PhD in clinical and community psychology, what's your perspective on the modern day mental illness or mental health? Like, and with you being boots to the ground in Chicago in the community, what's your perspective, bro?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think what you're doing right now is really exposing the fallacy of this whole mental health movement we're in right now. Real popular. Everybody talking about going to therapy. So all the politicians and grants, everybody like it's a sexy thing to talk about right now. And people are excited about that. I'm nervous about that for exactly why you describe it, because what it's doing is focusing in on the individual experience of a systemic trauma that leaves that system hands free, because we're not diagnosing the system is sick. We diagnosing the person is sick. Right. Bobby Wright, another psychologist you should read. He talks about sort of the white people as being pathological, not superior, but there's a sickness that they create, the desire to dominate, the greed, the violence, and then the creating systems around that I disagree a little bit around how we build. I think we are built to handle. I think we can heal from these things.
Okay.
The problem is that the harm never stops.
Gotcha. That makes
Right.
sense.
But it's constant. It's
Yeah.
every day. You can't breathe air. You can't eat the food. Like you can't turn the TV on without. I was scrolling a second ago. I saw another black boy in Denver getting out of Denver, Aurora, Colorado, getting shot by the police. I can't stop being reminded of the powerlessness that they want me to believe. And the trick is they're trying to convince us that it's our fault. Because we deficient somehow. There's something wrong with us. And until we have the analysis that you're moving towards, which is they sick, the system is broken, that's what needs to be diagnosed and repaired and healed. And then we will be okay if you left us alone, because we have figured out. Because I do believe we built tough, we genius, we got to inherent, you know what I'm saying, move towards a wholeness. But if we constantly surviving because somebody's constantly attacking, and then throwing their hands up and then like, no, look, what's wrong with y'all, right? So when I'm in you know, I'm in prisons, I'm in juvenile centers, they expect me as a therapist to come in to tell the boys to make good decisions and pull your pants up and like breathe and do mindfulness exercises. I start with where you start at, which is systems analysis, which is diagnosing these systems, which is helping expose the violent, corrupt people who are in charge right now, who we might even look up to because they got suits and ties and they look good and they're making money, but they corrupt and they demons at the heart, right? And they've benefited from centuries of violence over and over again against Black, Brown, Indigenous people. That is a sickness, right? All around the world, they like a plague. They go around and they create, right? They suck out the resources and they deplete the people and they reprogram them, make them think that they're trying to civilize them, but they're really actually deteriorating the fabric of the humanity that we've survived on for centuries. There's a sickness in that.
Yeah, man.
It does not get diagnosed. We always feel like, okay, the outcome is my own individual addiction, my own individual to the bipolar, but there's a cause of it, a root cause of it, that the mental health movement right now would love for us to ignore. They want us to just, even the yoga, they want to keep going to yoga and breathing. The mind, like even the alternative holistic is still an individual based that does not disrupt the power systems as is, and identify the ways in which those things are inherently sick.
Man, that's powerful, bro. I look around, man, and I think about the other people now that are, number one, the difference between a pathological illness, mental illness, and what we see in society today. Is there like what I know pathological is really something that's passed down, right, or given to you from, I guess, passed down from environment or things like that. There are some people that are pathologically ill when it comes to mental illness, right? As far as whatever goes on, I'm not so familiar with the diagnosis, but what would we call what we facing here? Like what do you call that? Like environmentally induced?
I know, environmentally induced for generations, right? So there's a report that came out from NCOBRA, the National Coalition for Blacks for Reparations, about a year ago at this point, that describes the ways in which our DNA has been altered because of the generations of trauma.
Yeah.
Right? The field of study is epigenetics, if anybody want to go look into it.
Okay.
But they're starting to study what does it mean to pass down stress and trauma so that a baby is born impacted in the genetic level by the traumatic things that their mother and their father and their grandmother and have endured, that changes the way their brain functions. So you're born at a disadvantage, and at the same time, we also connected again to. We also got the blood of the first people flowing through us. So we got genius in our blood, and we got trauma in our blood. What happens after that, right? If you can be born with a gene that makes you predisposed to addiction, right? That's a real thing. You got your grandparents, whatever, and then you born with it with that genetic predisposition.
Facts.
You now, the awareness of that makes you able to make decisions about the kind of the environment you can put yourself in, right?
Yeah.
And so because of that, so we got to just be more aware. We got to teach. We got to have proper analysis, and then create opportunities for people to do the activities that enhances that genius in us, that brilliance in us. And for me, a lot of that is cultural stuff. Getting back to those things. That's why I use the drums and the yoga and the breathing. Tap into sort of that higher order thinking, that deeper vibration that has a healing pathway that can really just obliterate all the stuff that's coming at us, because our enemy are weak. Like this, what we talking about, like they've created this infrastructure. It only works because we participate in it.
Facts.
Right, they can call us whatever they call us, lazy and niggas. I mean, they call it whatever they want. It only matters if we believe it and say, okay, I must be a savage. Then I operate like that because we that powerful. Like we that, you know what I'm saying? We can do whatever we want. We put our mind to it, we create chaos or we create beauty. But because we're not choosing to have these conversations enough and use the mental health moment to point to the pathology of those in charge and give ourselves the grace, the compassion, the patience to work with each other, to understand we all been harmed in different ways. If there's a way to get out of it, we can get out of this.
I agree, man. I agree with you, man. And I realize now that I'm being patient with myself, right? As far as realizing I have a long way to go as far as like learning what I want to learn. I kind of want to, I want to go in the footsteps that I want to follow exactly the path that you have, right?
Yeah.
And I've been trying to get in. I have, I was halfway to pharmacy school, so I want to take them those before I got sick. So now I want to take those credits and move over into psychology so I can learn the Western way of medication to counter that. You know what I'm saying? Like in a space, because when you look at, like you said, a lot of this stuff can be passed down generation. That's generational trauma, right? It's passed down to you. But then you take it away from that part, man, and then you face with the now trauma, right? And then you face with the indoctrinations that we caught in school and religion and things like that, right? And then you go to the diets. You know what I'm saying? Like this mental illness now is cultivated. So when I hear people say like COVID really triggered mental illness, I don't agree, bro. I say COVID really gave people the opportunity to sit with their shit. You know what I'm saying? And them sitting with their shit is also equivalent to me and what I was dealing with that led me to my mental breakthrough, when it gave me the diagnosis of bipolar. I can function all day long as I'm moving, as long as I have to working 2 jobs, taking my kids, get all whatever, right? But the moment I sit down at night and I go to bed at night, then everything comes back and hits you in that space because I wasn't properly dealing with it. I was burying it. So when you look at this space, man, I laugh and people think it's funny, but I was like, bro, like how the fuck? I think everybody, and how can you not be mentally ill? And I think that especially within the hip hop culture, bro, like that representation of chasing a bag. It takes you away from genuinely your purpose, and that purpose takes you away from who you are, right? Because now I was chasing to be a CEO of a pharmacy with a public health degree, right? To make money, right? But I was that's not what I wanted to do. You know what I'm saying? Like I felt like I've always been pulled to mentoring. I've always been pulled to teaching and stuff like that. But for the bag purpose and for my past looked like, I needed this bag to make my life better. And now I'm in a space, bro, where I'm like, people get mad at me, bro, when I say I hate money, bro, because of the relationship that I say that without the ignorance of knowing that I needed for a typical lifestyle, right? For myself and my family. But I hate it for what I see what it's done to the hood. I hate it for the way it changed people, like good people. You know what I'm saying? I hate it for relationships that are destroyed. I hate it when you look at it, bro, because you get into a space where now, especially with the generation of kids that I mentor as far as middle school, probably somewhere after high school, man, like you starting to see the impact of these kids being left alone for whatever reason, us chasing the bag, us out here on our own pleasures and things like that, man. And now we're starting to really pay for that. So I named it the title of the show, man, What's the Cost, right? Because what's the cost of not talking about this? It costs a shitload. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't pay this back right now. It's gonna take work to get to this space, man. And people get mad at me. They automatically assume that you don't. I have a passion for finances. I can tell you how it works from beginning to end. I can tell you how the economy works. I can tell you everything about the global currencies and things like that, how it works, bro. But it's crazy how society is. If you stay in a space where I don't like money, something wrong with you. You're a broke nigga. All right. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so it's scary where things are going, bro, because when you sit back and look just from our generation down to, let's say, my 20-year-old generation, you start to see the decrease of value, right? It goes to that space where people realize the price of every fucking thing, right? It becomes cynic. Like, you realize the price of everything, bro, but they don't know the true value of anything, right? But when you sit down and talk to somebody, you ask them a question like, if I gave you $1 million a day, I die tomorrow, would you take it? Nobody's going to say yes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So we've been like that brainwashing, man. Like it's to a space, man, where you see people literally like it don't make sense, bro. Like all the way down to we arguing about scientific facts versus male or female. Now, these things should not be an argument. They wouldn't be an argument if we weren't dealing with a society of mental illness and whatever. Like we're off. And I feel like, man, that we're forcing ourselves to live a lifestyle that we weren't, that God or the higher power didn't make us live. This is something that's been created. Chase a dollar, chase paper. When you go back and you look at what like Africa within itself, bro, like Africa, if I was watching something on Akon when Akon said, if all the athletes in the United States or worldwide stop planning to leave today and went to Africa, right? If all the business people stopped today and went over to Africa and started doing business, bro, like the rest of the world would be in shambles because Africa has the richest soil. You know what I'm saying? Like you have commodity that comes from the earth that powers the entire world, bro. You know what I'm saying? But you look at every country that comes through that, man, for some reason they break us down and keep us from getting into that space of independency. And I think now I used to question, like, bro, like, why the hell, like, what did black people do to people across this world, man? They got people hating us so much. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's with our spirit. And then, like you said, it's just some evil shit out here. Some demons out here, bro. But it's scary, man, because when you look at how they played the natural process of the brain as far as fight or flight, you can't tell me somebody didn't sit down and map this shit out years ago. You know what I'm saying? They kind of understand the benefit of controlling a society, of controlling a population. And it's scary, man, because you don't know how far it's going to go. Anyway, like I got some of your thoughts on Western psychology and medication, all right? Give me some holistic approaches, right? And some holistic and indigenous approaches, right? And I've seen, like, on Instagram, you've also around some of the what are the Native American indigenous people sometimes every now and then what you said at their events. Do you see like similarities from African Americans to Native American indigenous folks?
Absolutely.
Kind of the same thing.
It's a lot of the same stuff. So my parents put me on a path to really studying indigenous African traditional thought. Right. So, you know, I grew up celebrating the kind of stuff, doing pouring libations, talking about ancestors.
Okay.
But it was real like superficial at the time. Okay. But it really got me curious as a lifelong learner myself to try to find out what were some of the healing practices. What did our ancestors believe? What do we think about God before the Bible, before the Islam? Like how do we worship? How do we pray?
What you find on that?
Man, it's a bunch of stuff, man. We got a lot. We really uncovering a lot of stuff. I went through a whole initiation into an African spiritual system called Ifa, based out of the Europe people in Nigeria. I got a new name through that called Adeye. But I spent a year in wearing white, studying rituals, building shrines, we sacrificing animals. Like, we got real deep. And what I discovered was, like, man, our ancestors were so brilliant. Like they conceptualizations of, you know, the earth and the different levels of being and existence was far superior to anything I ever learned from white people.
Right. But you know what's great? They took that concept and demonized it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It made it voodoo, black magic, and all other stuff.
Yeah.
It was really a religion, right? Like,
it's religion. It's sophisticated. It's brilliant. It makes sense. Like, you know, my life is better. Like, it focuses on character, principles, and values, and there's a science to being able to deal with calamity and help navigate the difficulties of life. Like this, you know, they really, like, they fucked us up, man, just by disconnecting us from our stuff. And so I found much more medicine, even in the analysis, not even just like the practices, but like just the understanding of our ancestors gave me a sense of like self, a sense of position in the world that, you know, I couldn't even imagine, you know, moving in the way that I do without that. And so there's just so many layers. We just gotta study this stuff. Like,
I'm with you. I didn't want you to go too far into. I just wanted to touch the top of it. But like, so like some of the holistic approaches that you see when you're out here and you're talking to these kids in the prison system and things like that in the community, and you find somebody, you're like, I've noticed now, like, anytime I've reached out to you to say something, you've never gave me the Western clinical approach to how you deal with it. Great man-to-man brother, spiritual side of it, like, hey, bro, you dealing with it, right? But you know, go through this, so take care of that, and get some. Your things you say all the time is get some rest.
No, for real.
So it's in that space, man. Like what type of what would you tell them? What kind of advice do you give a kid? In this
even the rest. So when I told you last time to get rest, that rest, you talk about like the grind culture. Part of the trauma that Black people have inherited, beyond just the regular capitalism that we all getting sort of infected by, is a ancestral memory of the sun up to sundown productivity identity.
Wow.
Right. So when I told you to rest, I meant rest on behalf of your ancestors who died, worked themselves to death, right? To build somebody else's empire up, to give them the power and the authority to continue to oppress us for generations afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Even when we tap it into joy, when we tap it into peace of mind, we have to do that on behalf of, right, those ancestors that made that sacrifice with no other hope, right? They knew they weren't gonna see it. They were just like, I'm just gonna stay alive, because everybody ain't live. Like some of them, what I'm saying, decided to jump off the boats, and some of them decided to kill their kids. Like, for sure, it made sense to me. But those that survived, that we the descendants of, that survived only so that they could come back through, cycle back through this existence in our real-time bodies, live through us. They deserve the rest, right?
Wow.
They deserve it. And so that's part of the conceptualization that I get from African psychology, is an understanding of life cycles, right? You go across the continent, if you talk about the Dogon people, if you go to South Africa, talk to Zulu people, you go to Kemet, you go to Nubia, everybody has an ancestral understanding of life cycles and the ways that we can still stay connected to the power of our ancestry, but we got disconnected from those tools, from those means of communicating. Right. I grew up just talking about ancestors like a memory, like an homage. When I started studying our systems, then I learned that we could literally in real time interact with them, and that they have wisdom to give about how to navigate this thing, that they can still support us in real time, that they're not resting in peace. They still fighting for the liberation of our people, right? But if we not ganging with them, then we're gonna have to keep learning some of the old lessons and bumping into the same mistakes. But like part of what I do with the homies, like just just they losing so many people. They got so much loss. Yeah. And part of it is helping them understand, just in plain terms, what does it mean to grieve and to connect and to have an understanding of ancestral cycles, and just begin to give them a chance to be able to like just sit, to encourage them to sit still and listen to whatever it is that their ancestors trying to give to them. Don't listen to me. I ain't even trying to give it to you, but like if you can sit still long enough, if you can detox long enough, if you can go sit by the water for a little bit, right, and just ask that question. You ain't got to know all the rituals. You ain't got to speak herbal. You ain't got to just they know what happened to us. They sympathetic to the struggle. Whatever sort of religious language you use, they understand that we still trying to just make it through. So part of it is encouraging us to think about what are those African principles of communalism, of spirituality, of ancestral reverence, of honoring elders, of holistic interconnection, like this, simple things. Every indigenous people, you go around the world, all the brown people understand this shit. It's this unique European that has a different worldview about domination, individualism, control, that have infected the world and introduced sort of the capitalistic infrastructure that we rely on, that has it's caused the havoc in the world, but also in our minds. We're gonna do that. Like these conversations, step by step, these books, the Wade Nobles, the Bobby Wright, Amos Wilson. If y'all into the world, like read Amos Wilson. We having a study group about Amos Wilson in a couple of weeks. If y'all reach out to me, I'll send you the flyer.
Please, definitely.
So we got to do that. We have to free our minds from the programming and the brainwashing that happened to us. Give ourselves grace to compassion, and then do these sort of practices, these daily practices. It ain't even complicated. Just drink more water, get some rest, be kind to each other, right? Eat good things, right? It ain't rocket science. Like we know
it ain't rocket science at all. It's funny though, man, because I've been in a space where I kind of just been getting hit with things, like not hit hard, but let's say I've been catching on to things, right? And you hear people talk about what you just referenced when you tell a kid to sit back and hear your ancestors is equivalent to what they say is it's a deeper dive and follow your heart, right? Because
that's right.
You feel that pull. You assume it's something within you, but it's not. It's really your ancestral pull, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then you get into a space where you start listening, like we've been conditioned here to think that everybody else is crazy, right? But I was listening to somebody. I think he was from I think he was Pakistani, and he was saying something about like he was like in the U.S. when people die, everyone wears black, right? That's the way to be, right? It's because black attracts negativity, attracts energy that comes from it. They say you're supposed to wear all white. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier when she was talking to me about a cleansing, right? That got to a space where that a natural cleansing that you go in, that speaks on in the Bible if you go look at it, right? As far as like it's a cleanse. I can't remember all the ingredients she said, but she said at the end of that, as a man, you go to bed wearing white, whether it's a white rag, whether it's something white to attract to keep that negative stuff from come pulling your way. But when you look at what we've been taught, man, I mean, number one, we haven't been taught any of that, right? And it gets us to a space where you start to see where we are now, right? And you start to think that this is not a coincidence. Like what we here and what people are experiencing across the world. If you're not connected, man, you don't know any of this stuff exists. You know what I'm saying? So it's just it's weird, and I think I can't think of to reference what you were talking about as far as like they come back and help us, right? Because our answers come back and help us in a way, right? And they're aware of what we go through. But I've been seeing things and hitting little articles and little and things that speak on like a wave of a generational wave, right? Where each generation has a purpose, right? But the Western civilization has neutralized that in many ways, right? So it was saying like this generation that I've been saying this for the longest time, Doc, that when I look at these kids in the generation that I talk to and work with and deal with, these kids, if they are groomed properly, right? The fight that these kids have, bro, these kids will make a difference in this world that none of us been able to do for years because of the tenacity they have within that fight. But now what you see with the internet and things like that, they're fighting the music, they're fighting each other versus fighting each other, they're fighting parents, they're fighting authority figures, instead of taking it and putting it into a space where it needs to be placed at, right? I used to think that shit was crazy, bro. Like I used to be like, man, but now I sit back and look at it, man, like you from World War I and that generation, all the way down into when we went to war with these motherfuckers. You see like how somebody knows, what time it is. You know what I'm saying? Like so, I always wonder, bro, because when go to a space where let's just look at the Catholic religion, right? Bro, bro, if you're a religion, why is so much dirt coming out of there? If that's the place, why are you guys holding so much? I can't think of them. I have the brain for it. But the Vatican out there, right? Why are you locking away information that's supposed to be from God? You know what I'm saying? Like, so it makes you question different things from different perspectives. I ran off a little bit, but no, I'm starting to understand, man. Like, that wave of energy that comes back from your ancestors. Like when you sit back and look at it, man, you really do see like some of the impact that they're trying to make. But you see that something else, these demons, whatever it is, bro, is getting ahead of us, and we're falling for it every single time, getting off track. I don't know, man. Like where we going? Like I don't know. It's weird. I can't. It's something that if you don't really at the level of study that I'm at right now, I'm just beginning to grasp this concept of the things that we've been taught is crazy is going on. And we sit back and just look at the basic things, right? When you see how the Nation of Islam, right? Just simple as somebody as Farrakhan, right? When I was growing up, bro, they was demonizing the shit out of Farrakhan, right? But then when you listen, he not preaching like straight Islam. He touching on Christianity, he touching on everything, kind of bring them together. So it makes you wonder, like, what's the benefit of that? What do they know? The one more thing, man, like it's within that question I've asked you. We talked a little bit earlier about the role, identity, and the lack of plays in mental illness and healings. Out of your clients, man, have you noticed like that? Have you noticed like a sense? It may not have to be major, like a sense of identity. Like for me, a loss of it where I looked at my dad, I can see characteristics, right? And I looked at my mom, I can see characteristics that way, right? But then one day I was walking to my mom's house, bro, and I literally walked past the picture of my grandfather I have never seen before. She must have just found. And it stopped me dead in my tracks, bro. He looked just like me, right? And within that space, I felt complete. You know what I'm saying? I felt like I had the missing answer. Like, that's where my love for science came from. That's where my love for psychology came from. And you find out his interests and things like that, bro. It does a lot to just being your confidence. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. Have you noticed that within that space?
No, absolutely. What I would describe what you experienced in that moment is right. So when I'm talking about our ancestors, it's not just the picture and the memory that your grandfather is still present in your body.
My uncle told me that.
Craving the science.
Yeah.
So when you engage with it, and that feeling of completeness that you get is a alignment of something much bigger than what's happening in the moment.
Facts.
Right? There's things we can't see that are occurring on multiple levels and dimensions. The movies are starting to play with it right now. The Spider-Mans and all that, talk about the different dimensions. Right. I mean, I think that's old spiritual science. Ancestors understood that, a long time ago. So I think that what's happening with the Kobe Cambone, another psychologist you should look into, he had a theory about cultural misorientation.
Okay.
That there's a mental illness and just taking the understanding, the framework, the philosophical base of people and just turning it on his head. You mentioned it earlier when you talked about I forgot what you were saying, but it made me think about all the young people I see that think like eating healthy is white people stuff. Right. I forgot what you were saying. I remember thinking about that. They think reading is you know what I'm saying, is not ours.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a complete misorientation that has disoriented our identity, our base. So when you ask them, who are you? A simple question. Everybody should be able to find some time where you can answer the question, who am I? What am I about? What am I made of? What are my principles? What are my values? A lot of young people don't know. They just really following whatever they see. They have not spent that time to sit. That's a precious time, that sort of teenage time, that development of finding yourself, like, it's critical. Yeah. And if they scrolling all day, they fall asleep with the TV on and wake up with the you know what I'm saying, AirPods in. The corporations is constantly distracting them from being able to sit still and listen. That question can only be answered in silence. Your ancestor, your grandfather, your grandma been trying to get your attention your whole time, but you just constantly scrolling.
That's
or
true.
You constantly popping pills, or you smoke. I mean, whatever it is you distracting yourself, and so they missing that identity development moment. And then you product, you a puppet. The master can always just play you. So we got to get our young people back into that mode of just like being able to sit still. I get so many shrugged shoulders. Who you are? What you about? What you made of? Like you said, it's either money, chasing money, getting girls, right? Superficial stuff, just like going through the motions. But like, what you here for? Like, why you here?
Yeah.
There's this big giant ball in the middle. It's like, what you here for?
Yeah.
Most of them have no idea.
Man.
And so part of the mentorship process has to be creating kind of relationships where we can guide them toward their own journey. But we're not giving them the answers because we can't. That was comforting. Like that wave of their generation is directing them something that we can't even imagine yet. We got to give them space to foster and cultivate that. But if we don't even get them sit down long enough,
facts,
get the pills out their mouth, turn the TV off for a second, then we're gonna have just another loss. Right, we're gonna be further and further behind. It's a critical moment we're in. Like, we really
very
in trouble.
Critical, bro.
This.
Right, and it's funny what you said about earlier, man. It goes back to the one thing. The one thing you said about my grandfather coming back, bro. I think my uncle tried to tell me one day, right? He was saying, because I was telling him like, oh, like it was weird, bro. Like I finally figured out like who, like where, like me, like I'm saying. He was like, Devin. He was like, you remind me of my father. He said, you remind me of Pop so much. He said, you talk like him, you walk like him, you are interested in the same thing that he was interested in. But I think he kind of see that I was getting uncomfortable in his face. But no, man, it makes so much sense, man, because it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because where else would this? If the environment that I came up in, the things that I've seen, bro, the things that I've made it through, and the things that I've been put in position to, right? A lot of people think that I am my passive at what they think is passive, what they think is nice, what they think is a space where that like they think that was me, that I was green. But I wasn't, bro. I came up in the same environment that everybody else came in. That little monster with them, right? But I chose not to let that part out. I chose to fight that deep down inside, right? So when you get into that space, it's just like 40 years old. You just like, oh my god, like it's a bigger picture here. You know what I'm saying? But going back to what you said earlier about how they go around the world and they they instilled their way of thinking, right? It's not coming from a racist place at all. It's just the facts of, you take a look and read, you see. And then you go around, bro, and you take a look at the suicide rate in men alone, right? It's increasing not just in the United States, bro. It's increasing across the world, like at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Like that's something powerful going on, man. I can go for days, Doc. So I'm gonna go ahead and just keep it on track as far as like we're gonna close out in a second. What advice do you have for those that are trying to get well within the Western approach to mental health and mental illness, but it's not working? Like, what would you tell them to start?
And I ain't saying like just throw away the whole thing, right?
Yeah, facts.
If you got a therapist and he or she or they, right, is useful for you, you got somebody to talk to.
Facts.
Keep doing it. If you got some medicine that's working, keep doing that. My encouragement is to just expand your repertoire, your toolkit. If you want to be healthy, it ain't no one thing, because it wasn't no one thing that got you sick. You talked about it earlier. We so powerful. They had to throw everything at us: the media, the health, the spirituality, the finances. They got to throw everything they can. If they let up for one moment and let some of these, the brilliance shine through, we would figure out a way to dismantle the whole thing. So they constantly just, they had to collaborate to get us to this place that we are. Around the world, they had to work together. And so there is no one thing that's going to free us or heal us. So if you think that your therapy session, you're talking for an hour, is going to be the thing, like that's not enough. It might help you cope. We train to help people cope and get back to work. That's what we train to do. But to heal and to grow and to be your best self and to tap into your highest self, like that's going to require a bunch of different, avenues. And you're going to have to look into your eating, your diet, your health, your exercise, your movement, your art, what you feed yourself, what you watching, what you looking at, your music, like your rituals. If you acknowledging the fact that we ain't talking about spooky stuff, like the fact that your grandfather has been guided, walking with you the whole time, and could not do some of the things that you got the opportunity to do, and wants to relive them through you, and is also protecting you because of that, right? Once you become aware of that, then it might be nice to thank him for protecting you from some shit you ain't even realize.
That's real, bro. Because I swear, bro. Like when I was in that psych ward, it was like I got an expedited lesson, and what took him years to get. You know what I'm saying? Like I looked around, and I could see certain things. Like, all right, they said this lady is they said this guy is a paranoid schizophrenic, but this guy just told me why he's paranoid, right? And then when he tells you this shit, you're like, shit, I would be too. You know what I'm saying? I don't make it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so we started to sit down and look. I started to realize that it was something deeper, right? In a space, and literally, man, when I was in that psych ward, bro, like I kept telling the nurse, I'm like, Miss, I'm not crazy. The lady was like, the nurse was like, you're not crazy. She was like, you're going through something you need to figure out. Figure it out while you're in here. Take the time, take the downtime, and start to figure it out, right? And that's the space where I started connecting the dots. But no, bro, that's powerful, man. Like the conversation, I appreciate you, man, for coming on tonight having this conversation with me. A lot of times, man, I think back, like I said, just from the interactions I get from everyday people, man, I like when you come from a space like me, it's annoying. You know what I'm saying? Like, people, why you always reading to that? I didn't say all that. Why are you reading that deep to what I just said? And it's my natural ability. That's what I do. You know what I'm saying? So I'm learning to embrace that now. I'm learning to be comfortable with having these type of conversations on this type of platform to bring awareness, but also have this conversation and then bring it back to what we're dealing with in the Western approach, and to have another one some more times, bring a different spin to it, talk about relationships and things like that. Just bring a whole thing, just bring a whole perspective on, give a whole lens on life, bro, as far as relationships and with a relationship, as far as marriage and how that works and what it takes to make it work and what love is, and really, man, like a lot of things that I felt like that got me out of my place of my illness, bro, was the love and support of my family. Medication balanced me for allowed me to a space where I realized this ain't it, and if I don't want this shit, I need to work harder on myself. But the love that I had, man, the acceptance that I had from my family and my friends, bro, really got me to a space of like, you know what? I can do this. You know what I'm saying? Like it ain't as hard as
and that's good old fashioned African medicine, right? Family, community, relying on a group, the interconnectedness of us, an extended sense of self beyond the individual, like that. That's as old as humans. That's as old as the African continent, right? So that's the medicine. We got to lean on each other. We got to rely. We got to learn how to trust each other again.
No doubt.
To create those villages that got us this far. That if we throw them away, we're going to see nothing but chaos going to unfold.
Facts, man. Hey, Doc, man, I ain't gonna hold you no more, bro.
No, I appreciate your invitation, man. I always appreciate the conversation too. I love what you're doing. So,
I appreciate it, Doc, man.
I'm
gonna keep going, bro. I'm gonna keep going, man. I appreciate you, man. We're gonna be in contact, dog. I'm gonna go ahead and edit this up like the other ones I got, and I get it to you, man. And again, man, thanks, bro. Have a good one, and
yes, sir.
Keep on a good fight, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You too, man.
All right, Doc. I'll talk to you later, man. Have a good one.
You too, bro.
All right. All right, fam. Thank you guys for joining us tonight, man. Following this conversation, it was a dope conversation, man. I was excited about that one. I love talking to Dr. Obari in that space, man. It brings so much enlightenment my way. I hope you guys got something from it. This Sunday, we won't be doing a show this Sunday because it's Father's Day, so I'll be chilling out, taking the day off. But we will be back next Thursday with some more episodes on, some more conversation in regards to, bringing awareness to mental health. This, no problem, Ella. Hey, thanks for joining. And everybody else who had, man, but no, I thank you guys, for tapping in and kind of checking out the conversation and getting entertained by it. Tonight you seen a little bit of my nerd side, you seen a little bit of my spirit, you seen a little bit of all of me on this thing, man. And it's the part that I feel like God has been pushing me, or the universe, or my ancestors have been pushing me to do for the longest time that I've been running from, man. So again, thank you guys for joining me. I'll see you guys next Thursday at 9:30 p.m., man. Y'all have a good night.